There are moments that split your life into two parts. Before you knew the truth, and after. For me, it happened at 9:56 a.m. on a Tuesday. 4 minutes before our quarterly marketing meeting. I was sitting in the conference room, sipping my burnt office coffee, mentally rehearsing the opening slide of the $2.3 million campaign I'd built over the last 3 months. That's when it popped up. A Slack notification. You've been added to #creative, Corner V2. We had dozens of work channels, so I didn't think twice. I clicked on it, expecting something about last-minute copy updates or presentation prep. Instead, what I saw made my heart stop. 347 unread messages. And a banner at the top that read, pinned by Dylan West. Rules for posting in stupid accent memes. Wait, stupid accent memes? Then I saw my face. Photoshopped onto farm animals. Clips of me speaking during a Zoom meeting, edited with giant subtitles that spelled out my words phonetically. This product is not aligned with target market. Haha, she sounds like a Bond villain. More like Colette the cornfield queen. I felt my throat close. My vision blurred. There were hundreds of messages. Jokes about my voice, my clothes, my immigrant desperation energy. Someone even found a video of a traditional Austrian wedding dance and captioned it, Colette's Plan B career. I stared at the screen, paralyzed. And then came the final nail. A screenshot of my campaign pitch deck, the one I'd spent 73 hours building, posted by Dylan with the caption, stole this from our Eastern European elf. Let's win awards with it before she finds out. I don't even know how long I sat there. The world around me disappeared. I didn't hear my manager calling the meeting to order. I didn't even notice the room filling up until Jenna, one of the senior associates, and someone who'd liked my engagement post the day before, leaned over and whispered, "You okay, babe? You look pale." I closed the laptop, smiled, nodded, then stood up. "Actually," I said calmly, "I think I left something important at my desk." I walked out. I didn't cry. Not yet. Not even when I reached the stairwell and sat on the cold, concrete step. I just sat there, shaking, phone clenched in my hand, my ears ringing like I'd been slapped. Before. I should tell you what came before all this. So you'll understand why it hurt so much, and why I didn't just walk away. I moved to the US at 23 with 2 suitcases, a marketing degree, and a green card I fought tooth and nail for. My father owned a bakery in Austria. I grew up behind the counter, kneading dough before school and working double shifts during the holidays. That's where I learned about customer psychology. How people buy stories, not just products. When I landed the job at Armoral Creative, it felt like winning the lottery. They were young, agile, boutique but bold. I was one of only 2 non-Americans on the entire team. Everyone smiled, welcomed me with Prosecco and Pinterest boards. But the longer I stayed, the colder it got. Jokes about my village charm, and poor Colette trying to pronounce analytics, crept in. At first, I laughed with them. I wanted to belong. But slowly, I realized I was never in on the joke. I was the joke. I had my ideas stolen, shot down, or repackaged by louder, smoother-talking teammates. Usually Dylan or Jenna. One time I pitched a campaign centered around nostalgia marketing for Gen Z, and 2 weeks later, Dylan presented it with a different font and got a standing ovation. When I confronted him, he said, "Relax. We're all a team here. You should be flattered." I wasn't flattered. I was furious. But I needed the job. The visa. The stability. So I smiled, swallowed it, and kept building. Until that morning. After. I sat in the stairwell for 10 minutes, processing. Then I opened my phone and started screenshotting everything. Slack lets you access older messages if you're added late to a private group. And whoever added me didn't realize that. I had a full archive. I didn't just see cruelty. I saw Jenna forwarding internal strategy docs to her boyfriend at a rival agency. Dylan mocking NDAs and saying he reused the Austria Girls client deck for another pitch. Sarah, our HR liaison, literally replying LOL to a meme of me with my face pasted onto a cow wearing lederhosen. This wasn't just bullying. It was corporate sabotage. And illegal. I took screenshots. Time-stamped everything. Backed them up to my personal drive. But I wasn't going to HR. Not yet. HR had been tagged in half those messages. They were laughing too. No, if I wanted real revenge, I needed to make it bigger than just office drama. I needed witnesses. And a strategy. The setup. I returned to the meeting room just as they were finishing. Dylan was standing, clicker in hand, walking everyone through his pitch, my pitch. He gestured to the big screen and said, "This idea was born from collaboration. Everyone here had a hand in this." Liar. I looked at the slide. Word for word, my phrasing. Even my notes from a Google Doc. Copied and pasted. When they clapped, I clapped too. When they asked questions, I smiled. And when the VP of strategy turned to me and said, "Colette, you've been quiet, any thoughts?" I simply replied, "Not yet. But I will. Soon." The revenge begins. That night, I didn't go home. I went to a cafe near campus and started writing. By morning, I had a formal email to the company's largest client, detailing potential IP violations, a legal complaint draft citing Title VII discrimination laws, an anonymous upload of the stupid accent memes, chat, watermarked, timestamped, with a short voiceover introduction that said, "This is how Armoral Creative treats the women who build their campaigns." And finally, an encrypted folder shared with a local journalist who had once interviewed me at a networking event. She covered corporate discrimination and had just won an award for her expose on gendered layoffs in tech. I signed it. A voice you said was too funny to take seriously. The email went out at 7:01 a.m. Not to HR. Not to Dylan. Not even to the executive team. No. I sent it directly to Armoral Creative's largest and most high-profile client, Carradine & Wells, the luxury watch brand whose entire spring campaign was my strategy. The campaign Dylan had claimed credit for. The campaign launching next month. My message was brief. Come. Almost cold. Dear Carradine & Wells. As a courtesy and in the interest of ethical transparency, I believe it's important you be aware of internal conduct at the agency currently managing your campaign assets. I've attached timestamp documents, Slack messages, and visual records indicating multiple violations of your signed NDA, intellectual property misuse, and discriminatory behavior involving your assigned strategy lead, myself. Please be advised I am taking further action. I trust your values align with those you market. I didn't sleep after sending it. I just stared at the screen. Waiting. Watching. Heart hammering in my chest. At 8:12 a.m., the reply came. One line. "Thank you. We will be escalating this to our legal division immediately." By 8:45, I was in the office. Everyone else arrived late, groggy, with iced coffees and gossip about weekend plans. Dylan nodded at me like nothing had happened. Jenna complimented my blouse. They had no idea. But at 9:23 a.m., the first earthquake hit. An all-hands email. Subject, urgent, mandatory town hall at 10:15. Then came whispers. Nervous eyes. Slack went eerily quiet. And by the time we all filed into the main presentation room, you could cut the tension with a knife. The town hall. The CEO, Marianne Chris, looked shaken. Her lipstick wasn't applied. Her assistant was pacing with a clipboard. "Something's wrong," Jenna whispered to Dylan. He snorted. Probably just another diversity PR push. Wrong. Dylan. Marianne took the mic and forced a smile. "Hi everyone. I know this is unusual, but a matter has come to light involving internal conduct and client relationships. Please know we are addressing it swiftly." And then, effective immediately, Dylan West and Jenna Craig have been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Silence. Dead. Ice cold. Silence. Jenna gasped. Dylan stood like he didn't understand English. Me? What investigation? He turned toward me. Finally. Did you do something, Cornfield? I tilted my head. No. Dylan. You did. He lunged. Not physically, but verbally. You stole my pitch, you liar. You've been riding my coattails for months. But Marianne had security usher them both out. And for once, no one clapped. Not even the usual mean girl gallery from HR. Because now, they were all wondering, who else was next? Damage control. Later that day, I received a carefully worded email from the CEO's office asking if I'd be open to a private discussion. I went. Not to be polite. To set the terms. Marianne and legal were already there. They asked if I'd be willing to retract what I'd sent to the client. I smiled. I didn't just send it to the client, I said. I sent it to your competitors. To the press. And to 3 different labor law advocates. You don't get to unspill that tea. Marianne paled. Legal cleared their throat. What are you asking for, Miss Marwood? I laid it out like a contract. Full written admission of what was done to me. Made public internally. The stolen campaign reattributed to me, on all external branding. A title bump and 6-figure severance package if I chose to leave. And mandatory third-party cultural bias training for all employees. Oh, I added. And Sarah from HR? She goes too. She laughed at my accent. It's in the screenshots. They blinked. Then nodded. By noon, Sarah's desk was empty. Meanwhile, Carradine and Wells pulled their campaign, not from me, but from Armorel. Instead, they asked me directly if I'd be open to consulting on their next initiative. As a freelancer. With a doubled budget. The kicker? Their rep said, we honestly had no idea that kind of behavior was happening behind the curtain. You've handled this with professionalism we rarely see. Professionally. If only they knew what I really wanted to do. But revenge isn't about fire and fury. Sometimes, it's just about the long, slow undressing of power, in front of a mirror they can't escape from. The group chat fallout. Despite being nuked from Slack, the stupid accent memes channel had already been downloaded 64 times. I know this because I had full access logs from the leak folder. That meant, at least 4 senior managers downloaded the evidence. 2 interns. 1 legal aide. And someone from the parent company headquarters. By the end of the week, 4 more employees resigned quietly. No press releases. No LinkedIn farewells. Just gone. Suddenly, everyone who had rolled their eyes at my rural fairy tale voice was scheduling one-on-ones with me. Apologizing. Flattering. Offering collaborations. Too late. You only get one chance to laugh at me before I make sure no one forgets it. 3 days after Jenna and Dylan were escorted out of the building, I walked into the office feeling like a ghost in my own story. People smiled at me cautiously. Meetings went quiet when I joined. Slack threads slowed down the second I typed a word. They weren't afraid of me. They were afraid of what else I might know. And truthfully, they should have been. Because I wasn't done. Not even close. That morning, an email landed in my inbox. One that made my stomach turn, not from fear, but from pure ice-cold rage. Welcome back, Marcus Renner, interim COO. Marcus Renner. The name hit like a slap. He was my first department lead when I joined Armorel 3 years ago. I remember how he greeted me. Ah, our Austrian import. Let's see what Euro spice you bring to the table. I laughed politely back then, thinking it was just awkward corporate humor. I hadn't yet learned how polished condescension works in this industry. He was the kind of man who praised your work in private, then reworded it for someone else's promotion. Who used phrases like executive presence as a veil for his own bias. He left last year to pursue a sabbatical, just after an anonymous complaint surfaced alleging targeted culture-based suppression tactics against several junior employees, including myself. I'd been one of 3 women with accents who'd mysteriously lost opportunities under his leadership. Now he was back. And my instincts told me this wasn't some random reshuffle. This was cleanup. Optics. The board needed a loyal face to patch up the chaos I'd just exposed, and they brought back the man who helped create it. I watched him work the room during our all-hands that afternoon. He shook hands, made jokes, called the harassment situation an unfortunate misalignment in values. My name was never mentioned, but his eyes kept flicking to me as if to say, I remember exactly who you are. So I smiled back with a look that said, and I remember what you did. I knew he'd come for me. I didn't have to wait long. The invite arrived before sunset. Quick touch base. 10 a.m. tomorrow. Conference room 3A. Room 3A wasn't used unless you were getting promoted or managed out. When I walked in the next morning, he was already there, perched on the edge of the table with his trademark notepad and a bottle of mineral water. Still pretending to be approachable. Still dressing like he owned the air in the room. "Colette," he said warmly, standing as if we were old friends. "Look at you. Still here. And now quite the celebrity." I sat down without shaking his hand. "I suppose being underestimated comes with benefits," I said. "People never see you coming." He chuckled tightly. "Let's speak frankly. We both know things have gotten a little complicated. The board has concerns about stability, morale, your role in escalating the situation." "My role?" I leaned forward. "Are you suggesting the problem was exposure, not behavior?" "I'm saying that perhaps if things had been handled differently, certain reputations wouldn't have suffered. And I'm here now to rebalance what's left." There it was. The veiled threat. The corporate way of saying fall in line or fall apart. But I didn't flinch. I simply said, "I think the board would be very interested in knowing what I found in your old Slack threads." That got his attention. He sat back. "Interesting bluff," he said. I reached into my bag and slid a printed copy of a message across the table. A screenshot, dated 16 months ago, when he had responded, "Classic immigrant overreach," to one of my rejected campaign drafts, then forwarded it to Jenna to clean it up and dumb it down for clients. He stared at it in silence. The smirk was gone. "You were saying something about rebalancing?" He exhaled slowly. "What do you want?" I met his eyes. "First, a public acknowledgement of your role in undermining immigrant employees. One that goes out internally. Second, you resign quietly by the end of the week. Third, you leave without dragging anyone else down with you. And lastly, you give up your advisory seat on the diversity initiative you helped gut last year." "You're blackmailing me," he said. "No," I replied. "I'm offering you a controlled exit instead of the front page of Business Week." He didn't speak. He didn't argue. He just picked up the paper, folded it in half and said, "You always were sharper than we gave you credit for. You still are." By Friday, Marcus Renner had stepped down, citing health reasons. And suddenly, no one was safe anymore. The silence in the office shifted from tense to terrified. Not because I was vindictive, but because I was right. I had receipts. I had allies now. Quiet ones who began forwarding me files, demaying me tip-offs, and telling me, "It happened to me too." And I wasn't done. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted a reckoning. Something shifted after Marcus resigned. People started whispering my name in hallways. Not with mockery anymore, but with caution, respect, maybe even fear. I had gone from being the accent girl to the woman who'd made 2 senior leads disappear in a month. HR had replaced their passive-aggressive tone with wide-eyed politeness. The CEO hadn't made eye contact in days. And I started noticing new Slack channels being quietly archived. Old group chats vanishing. Desks being cleared out mid-afternoon without notice. I wasn't surprised. Because the people who once called me forgettable now understood what I was capable of. But I wasn't interested in just scaring them. I had no desire to play office godmother. I wanted something deeper, structural, permanent. I wanted the culture they'd tried to force me out of to be held under a microscope until it burned. And to do that, I needed the rot exposed from the top. The thing about corporate culture is, it mirrors its creators. And Armoral's culture had a very specific creator. Clive Warwick, the company's founder and current chairman. You wouldn't know his name unless you were in the right rooms. But he was the real power here. The one who installed Marcus years ago. The one who handpicked Jenna and Dylan for their charisma. He didn't run day-to-day operations anymore, but he was the man behind the curtain. And I had a feeling he wasn't innocent in all this. So I started baiting him. It began with a company-wide email I wrote titled, "Lessons Learned." I knew the leadership team wouldn't dare stop it from being shared, not after what happened to Marcus, so it landed in every inbox at 9 a.m. sharp on Monday morning. It was polite, professional, poised, but every sentence was a scalpel. I wrote about how cultural bias doesn't just live in jokes, it lives in hiring decisions, in who gets invited to pitch meetings, in who's allowed to lead without being told to tone it down. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. The room already knew who they were. And buried halfway through the message was one sentence I knew Clive would read 3 times. Perhaps the true accountability lies not just with those who mock, but with those who made room for them at the table. By noon, Clive had sent a reply. He wanted to meet. His assistant scheduled me for Thursday at 3 p.m. in the executive lounge. A space with soundproof glass, premium espresso, and just enough fake greenery to pretend this place had a soul. When I walked in, Clive was waiting by the window, drink in hand. He looked older than the photo on our company website. Thinner. Quieter. But his eyes were sharp as ever. "Ms. Marwood," he said. "You've been busy." "I've been honest," I replied. He gestured for me to sit. "I've read everything. Seen the screenshots. The behavior was abhorrent. I trust the resignations have satisfied you?" I raised an eyebrow. "You think this was about satisfaction?" He said nothing. "I want to know why people like Dylan and Marcus were allowed to rise through this company when their conduct was so widely known." He sighed. "Because they produced. Because they charmed clients. Because they didn't threaten the system they were part of." "And I do. You disrupt it." I nodded. "Good." He leaned back. "So what is it you're after, Ms. Marwood? A promotion? An apology? A settlement?" I smiled. "I'm after something you don't give out easily. Influence." His mouth twitched. "You already have it." "No. Right now I have fear." "That's not the same thing." He took a slow sip. "Go on." "I want a seat at the table. Not as a diversity mascot. Not as a damage control story. I want to lead strategy. I want hiring authority. I want to rebuild the company's cultural initiative from the ground up, outside of HR's current jurisdiction. I want veto power over new executive hires for the next 12 months. And I want full control of the Europe expansion portfolio." Clive laughed. Not mockingly. More like he didn't expect someone like me to have the spine to say it out loud. "And if I say no?" I slid a flash drive across the table. "Then I leak everything else. The burner emails. The private conversations between you and Marcus. The documents you signed off on when we rejected 2 qualified candidates because their accents were too heavy for client-facing roles." His face didn't change. But I could see the shift in his posture. The way he blinked a fraction slower. The breath that caught just behind his teeth. "How long have you been collecting?" "Since the day someone said I sounded like a Bond villain." There was a long silence. Then he nodded. "You'll have your seat. But understand this, everyone will watch you. Every move you make." I stood. "Let them. I'm not hiding anymore." When I walked out of that room, I wasn't just a marketing strategist. I wasn't the girl with the weird voice. I wasn't someone they could ignore. I was the system they now had to answer to. And that was only the beginning. The air shifted in the building after my meeting with Clive. Doors that used to stay closed started cracking open. Eyes that once rolled behind my back now tracked me carefully across every hallway. There were no more jokes. No passive-aggressive comments about my pronunciation. No stolen decks. If anything, people were overly polite, like they were tiptoeing through a landmine field they had helped lay. And maybe they were. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I just showed up. Every meeting. Every call. Every brainstorm session. And when I spoke, people listened. Even the ones who used to smirk when I said, "analytics," or tried to mimic my accent behind my back. Now they nodded, scribbled notes, and followed through. Because now, I wasn't just a threat. I was their future. My new title hit the company newsletter on a Monday. Director of Strategic Integration and Cultural Innovation. It sounded made up. But it wasn't. It was real. With power. With veto authority. With budget control. And with that came a new kind of pressure. I knew the only reason Clive agreed to this was because he assumed I'd either burn out or screw up. That eventually I'd misstep, or become too emotional, or fail at some high-stakes initiative and validate all their internal biases. So I did the opposite. I started winning. First, I rewrote our client onboarding pitch decks to reflect our actual team makeup, not just the loudest voices in the room. I assigned 2 immigrant analysts to lead a proposal for a luxury car brand. It blew the client's expectations out of the water. They extended their contract and doubled the original scope. Then I pushed for blind idea submissions during pitch week. No names, no bios, just concepts. The result? 2 junior interns, both of them women with heavy accents, topped the vote. One of the execs tried to joke about it. Looks like we've got a Cinderella story brewing. I didn't laugh. I said, no, it just turns out you've been ignoring genius because it didn't sound like you. After that, no one made jokes. But not everyone was happy. Quiet resistance began bubbling under the surface. Anonymous DMs. Passive notes left on desks. And then the inevitable. Someone tried to investigate me. HR called me in one afternoon for a routine audit. They said someone had flagged my team for irregular management practices. That I was creating a climate of favoritism toward non-native employees. I didn't flinch, because I'd expected this. So I calmly handed them a folder. Inside were timestamps, recordings, and documentation of every team decision I had made in the past 90 days. Each backed by results, metrics, and written approvals from supervisors. And on top of it all, I included a short note. Let me know if you'd like to review past HR mishandling of discrimination reports. I have those too. They dropped it within 24 hours. And suddenly, the quiet resistance went silent. That week, Carradine and Wells, the luxury watch client whose campaign had first been stolen from me, reached out directly. They'd heard about the internal reforms. They'd seen the coverage. And they wanted me, to consult directly on their global spring launch. A 6-figure freelance retainer. Full creative control. And the ability to select my own team from anywhere in the world. The irony? They said they chose me because of my voice. Our brand needs a story that feels lived in, their director told me. Your story, your perspective, is the brand. And just like that, the thing they mocked me for became the thing they couldn't get enough of. At the same time, the press started circling. The anonymous leak folder I'd built months earlier had made its way to a reporter I used to mentor in a Women in Tech roundtable. She asked if I'd go on the record. I thought about it. Long and hard. Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to be smart. I didn't want to be a footnote in a scandal. I wanted to be the one who wrote the headline. So I said yes, on one condition. They had to run the piece under my terms. No spin. No victim framing. Just the truth. When the article went live, it hit faster than I expected. The title? The accent they tried to silence. How Colette Marwood rewired a corporate culture from the inside out. It included quotes from current and former employees, clips from the memes, and a full breakdown of what I'd endured, and what I'd done in return. But it also told something bigger. A story about resilience, about women who don't walk away quietly, and about the power of turning humiliation into structure-shattering strategy. It trended for a week. And every time someone from Armorel reposted it with some variation of, proud to work under her leadership, I remembered the Slack messages that said I sounded like a cow with a PhD. But I didn't reply. I didn't clap back. I didn't gloat. Because I didn't need to. The world saw the receipts now. And I had one chapter left to write. The last time I walked into the Armorel headquarters lobby, it felt different. Not smaller. Not colder. But lighter. Like the building itself had exhaled. Like all the hushed cruelty and glass-walled indifference had been scrubbed out. And maybe, just maybe, it had. Not because the walls changed, but because the power in them did. A young woman at the front desk smiled brightly when I entered. Ms. Marwood, welcome back, she said. Not with that performative, strained tone I used to hear. No fake perkiness. No second glances at my badge. Just ease. I nodded and thanked her, holding a branded portfolio under my arm. The same one I designed 2 years ago, the one Dylan had once called quaint. I stepped into the elevator alone. The ride to the 26th floor used to feel like a slow crawl up a wall of glass, each ding echoing my own rising anxiety. Today, I barely noticed. I didn't check my reflection. I didn't straighten my blazer. Because this time, I wasn't stepping into a meeting hoping to be accepted. I was returning to finalize my exit, on my own terms. When I reached the executive floor, a thin woman with sharp bangs and efficient shoes ushered me into the legal boardroom. The same one Marcus had once called me into for a mentorship chat, that ended with him stealing my roadmap for a financial wellness startup client. He was long gone now. So was Jenna. Dylan. Sarah from HR. Half of the leadership tier had quietly stepped down or taken early retirement offers in the past 90 days. And the rest? They'd learned to keep their heads down and their mouths shut. Clive was already seated at the table when I entered, a cup of dark coffee in front of him. He looked tired. Not older. Just thinner around the edges, like leadership didn't feed him the same way anymore. "Colette," he said. "No handshake. Just acknowledgement." "I've reviewed the contract," I replied, placing the folder down. "My lawyers made a few minor revisions." His eyes flicked to the edits. "You're sure about this?" "Absolutely." The offer had been generous. A full creative director role overseeing Armoral's new European division, with triple my current salary, full relocation benefits, and hiring autonomy. A chance to build something from scratch. To rebuild them from the inside out. And I was declining it. Because I didn't want to patch up their system anymore. I didn't want to be the tokenized comeback queen in their redemption story. I wanted something bigger. Something that wouldn't be swallowed by quarterly goals or HR campaigns. I wanted legacy. So I told Clive what I was really doing. I've accepted a position at Strategist Global. They're starting a new culture-forward strategy firm, and they've asked me to lead it. He blinked once. Strategist. They reached out after the Carradine launch. Said my story resonated. Said they didn't want me despite my voice. They wanted me because of it. Clive sat back. "And what is it you'll be doing there?" "Building a consultancy designed to reform corporate culture from the outside. Unbiased hiring pipelines. Internal language bias audits. Executive accountability frameworks. And we've already signed 3 clients." "Anyone I know?" "Actually," I said, standing and collecting the contract, "you'll find out soon. One of them pulled their renewal from Armoral last week." He didn't flinch. Just nodded. "You were never going to stay." "No. But I wanted to make sure this place never forgets what it tried to do." The elevator ride back down was silent, but not heavy. I felt weightless. Not like someone who'd escaped a burning building. More like someone who'd rebuilt the foundation under it so it could never catch fire again. Outside, the wind was brisk but clean. Spring had settled into the city, and everything felt new, like the universe was resetting around me. I walked past the cafe I used to cry in during lunch breaks, past the corner where I once overheard Jenna mocking the way I said, "creative direction," past the park bench where I drafted my resignation letter, and I smiled. Because they had tried to reduce me to a joke. They mocked my accent. They twisted my heritage into a punchline. They stole my work, erased my name, wrote me off like I was ornamental. But I turned every insult into leverage. Every stolen deck into a stepping stone. Every laugh at my expense into fuel. And now, they'd have to live with the truth. Not just that I was better than they believed, but that their belief system was the problem all along. Strategist welcomed me with open arms. They gave me a team. A platform. A microphone that reached more people than I ever imagined. I traveled. I keynote. I mentored women who thought their voices weren't marketable. I taught immigrant interns how to own a room without softening their edges. I showed junior designers that you don't have to sound like the majority to lead like the future. And every time someone asked me how I got started, I told them the truth. I was underestimated, mocked, humiliated, and I built an empire on the ashes of their laughter. My voice, the one they tried to silence, echoed louder than theirs ever could. Not because I screamed, but because I refused to stay quiet. And sometimes, that's the sharpest revenge of all.